Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Awaken the World. We are inside the Awaken the World group. We are live right now. Predictions 2022. 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, if you care about such things, Wednesday, December 29th, in the final few days of 2021. And it is so very, very good to see you all. And I see Louisa is here. Hello, Louisa. I don't get to see many people popping up before my information sort of takes over. And I lose as the comments scroll up, I lose it completely. So nice to see you. Nice to see all of you this evening. Nice to see you, Jennifer. I see you popped up as well. Hi, Jennifer, and Denise and Lori. Okay, so Denise, I was concerned. I put that link there for you. And Lori, I knew you were going to make sure you looked ahead of time for sure. So, first of all, as always, let me express my love for each and every one of you. We are truly one consciousness expressing itself in mirrored form. And this is both the curse and the gift in this relative realm. And we're going to be talking a little bit about that as well, okay? Because everything in this relative space always comes in a pair, that yin and yang, that balance. Now, this is going to be an interesting discussion this evening because unlike prior years, I've taken things a couple of steps further. So maybe I'll just take a minute and sort of enlighten you on what the technique is that I use, okay? So in December, I take time to meditate outside in the frigid cold, and I use a breathing technique that I was taught when I was in Tibet, staying in the monasteries at high altitudes in the Himalayas, in order to keep yourself temperature equalized and be able to withstand the cold enough to get that focus of mind and sort of let your being melt into the darkness and into the snow and into the cold and become part of that. So in those states, when a certain level of, I'm going to say, disassociation with a sense of self is achieved, usually within a half an hour or so, I will begin to receive the intended guidance that I'm looking for, and that is to provide the best information I can to you for the coming year. Things that you need to be prepared for, things that you can do, mentally, physically, and spiritually in your spiritual practice to prepare yourself or yourselves for the coming year and the things that are going to be faced. Now, normally that's usually about the end of the process. Although a lot of times, if there's a lot of information related to climactic concerns or geologic concerns, for example, volcanic activity, I will delve into the scientific research because first and foremost, I'm a scientist at heart. So I will go to the peer-reviewed studies. I will go through and read them word for word. I will cross reference them and compare and come up with my own conclusion based on the science. This time I've taken things a couple of steps further yet. So I took the I Ching, otherwise known as the I Ching, and used the oracle to provide answers to the questions that I had already asked and received answers to, as well as consulting my Druidic rune stones with the same set of questions again, using a pattern known as Odin's Cross. And I'll talk about that when we get to that point. So I would like to say at this point that I've taken it beyond the norm. I've gone even deeper still to not only find more validation, but trying to firm up a little bit of the timeline as well. So, just before we begin this, the one thing I want to make abundantly clear is that, this is not meant to scare you, and yet it sure as hell should. And maybe scare is not the right word. What it should do is galvanize you. I got to tell you, if you have not watched the movie Don't Look Up, with Leonardo DiCaprio and a whole host of other amazing actors and actresses, you really need to watch that movie. It's on Netflix right now, and believe it or not, it is not a movie about a comet that's going to hit the planet, even though there's every indication that it is, and as a matter of fact, a comet does hit the planet. It's really not about that. It's not. The movie's really about the the runaway freight train of climate destabilization that we brought upon ourselves, and the fact that it's flying towards us and we're not willing to look up. And we could go deeper and deeper with that. But anyways, you know what? Watch the movie, and then maybe what we'll do is we'll get together and have a big, deep discussion about the whole thing. So, as I've said, it's not to scare you. It's more to galvanize you and prepare you and give you some of the tools you're going to need to be a most effective part of the one consciousness that we are, that is going to matter more than ever in the coming years. So with that, let's begin. Okay, so this is Predictions 2022, and we're going to start with the obvious because this is important, and that is the state of climate destabilization currently underway. And there's a number of really interesting things occurring right now, a lot more than people may realize. So, one of the most interesting points, and it coincides precisely with the information I've received involving a large uptick in geologic activity in 2022. Now, I am not getting straight or strict information whether or not a coast is going to fall off or what the case is going to be, but the information is that the rumbling and rebalancing and redistribution happening within the planet, brought about by some of the things that are happening upon the surface of the planet and a number of other factors, is going to cause a large uptick in geological activity. Some of it could be very, very dangerous, and there's reasons why that's happening. So one of the things to understand here is that our mantle, which sits underneath the crust, is fluid, okay? And the crust is quite hard. We can think of it as the hard cheese that gets cooked too hard on the pizza on the top. And underneath that, there's a boiling hot sort of cheese. And if you press your finger down on that hot cheese, or the cold cheese, or not cold, but the rigid cheese on the top, the stuff that got a little too cooked, it'll probably still be hot. You'll notice that when you press down, the hot cheese moves out of the way. And this weight that the ice, and keep in mind that in the Antarctic, some of these glaciers are kilometers thick on land. The pressing down of all that millions upon millions of gigatons of weight causes the mantle to move out to the outer edges of the ice sheets and the outer edges of the land surrounding the ice sheets. And the sheer volume and weight of ice that's been melting wholesale in an extreme uptick that started coincidentally around the end of 2012 is to the point now where Iceland, for example, has had 3 major volcanic eruptions in a 5-year period, which is not normal by any stretch, and history shows that. So what's happening is the more the ice is coming off the land now and melting away, and that weight is lifting, we get a process that can occur within no less or no more than 30 days, where the land that was depressed will now start to rise up. That molten material that was being that pressure that was being held by all that weight of the ice, preventing that molten material from reaching into the spot where there would be a weakness, that ice is melting away. That weight is coming off, and it's allowing that pressure, that strain, to be able to be released in the form of earthquakes and volcanic activity. So in 2022, we're going to face more volcanic and more earthquake activity, more geologic activity. Now, from what I've garnered, some of that will be devastating to humanity, and make life miserable for a lot of people on the planet. Where it's going to occur yet, it's hard to be sure. I don't have enough information on that I'm willing to say anything for certain, but it's something that you have to be prepared for. Now, one of the issues, of course, is that in this uptick that's happened, the melting of the glaciers, which offers an increase in volcanic activity and geologic activity and earthquake activity, those volcanoes release huge amounts of sulfur dioxide, methane, carbon, and add to our growing problem. So we have to understand another part of this, and this is called isostatic adjustment, and this is part of my research that I've done, and it's a very interesting concept, and it's important to understand it, and it's going to apply mostly in the second slide here. So isostatic adjustment is what's happening to the planet right now. So for the first time since our ability began to determine with absolute certainty how fast the Earth was spinning, since the beginning of those measurements, which was into the 1950s, late 50s, so the last 50, 60 years, the Earth has been slowly slowing down. Slowly slowing down. Yeah. The Earth has been slowing down ever since we've been able to measure. And as far as we're able to tell, it's been slowing down since the last ice age. And there's a reason for that. You see, the more weight we pile on the top, the more we squish the planet. You know, if you were to look at the Earth in space, it is not this perfect sphere. It's bulged in the middle. And that's because there's a lot of weight on both the poles. And this bulge is part of the reason why, along with the tidal pull of the moon itself, why the Earth has been slowing down. And to that end, the International Earth Rotation and Reference System Service, which is responsible for making sure that your GPS is actually correct and that your time is actually precise, has been actually adding leap seconds to the clocks every 2 or 3 years. The last recent times were in 2016 and 2015 and 2012. In 2020, the Earth still slowed down. But something interesting happened at the beginning of 2021 but by the time the summer came and we had started experiencing the full melt of what was happening with the heat waves in the Arctic and in Siberia, we reached a tipping point of sorts, where the amount of melt was beginning to redistribute the weight of the planet And we're actually becoming slightly more round. The bulge is not as pronounced. And because of that, for the first time in our recorded history, the Earth is speeding up. So what they're going to have to be doing this year is they're going to actually remove time. And adding time has always been okay, but removing time has been a little bit of a problem, but they're going to solve it where they actually need to remove time from the world's atomic clocks. They need to back things up a tiny bit in order to catch up with the fact that the Earth is spinning faster. Now, this could be I can tell you it's not. It is going to increase. That spinning is going to increase. And we know that there are good reasons for it, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the glaciers are melting away. So the other interesting thing that's happening is true polar wander, which is where the true polar axis is lined up and where it actually sits in relation to the land masses and everything. It used to be kind of moving towards Russia. Well, now it's shifting and it's moving more towards Europe. So the planet itself is beginning to experience an adjustment as it's dealing with the warming climate and what we're doing to it. And this is going to have some as yet unknown effects, but there's a couple things that we can talk about that are going to be coming up, and I think it's important we do. And again, this is about informing you. This is about making you aware of what is going on and where we're going to be. And if you were listening to me, in the fall, you heard me say to you, civilization as we know it has 5 to 8 years, and that still holds, unfortunately, very, very true. And we'll talk more about that as well. So, getting into the winter and spring of 2022, because of course we've just started the winter time. And as you're already seeing, we're going to experience much higher levels of precipitation and a very cold winter season with a lot of cold across the planet. And people are thinking, well, global warming, what's the big deal? Global warming and cold are perfectly related to each other, if you understand the science. And there's a reason why these things are happening. But what you need to know, if you're in Canada, on the west coast of Canada especially, and if you are in the upper states in the west area of the United States, in the more northern states, we're going to be faced with a lot higher precipitation right through into the springtime. The floods that we've experienced already are going to be multiplied yet again. I believe most of you are aware of the sheer number of feet of snow, breaking all records, that just recently fell on 3 states, including Northern California and Oregon and Washington. And the further south you go, the more things are going to bake, and it's going to be multiple heat waves this year. It will not be, 1 or 2, 3 or 4, 5-day heat waves. We're talking about weeks of stalled out weather, weeks where the jet stream is simply moved too far off, and we're going to stall out in weather patterns that are going to make 2021's death toll due to the heat waves look like a picnic. And that's just in North America. I don't even want to get into the rest of the things that are going to be happening, because it's no use depressing you too much about it. But the big thing to be prepared for this year is to be prepared for the extremes. Be prepared for extreme flooding. Be prepared for way too much rain when it comes, and then be prepared for extreme heat and I mean incredible heat, animal killing heat, human killing heat. And you need to prepare for that in whatever way you can. When we get through these, we're going to go deeper into the preparations and the mindset that's essential to have. And that really comes out in the I Ching and within the runes. And it's really interesting to see this. And we're going to get there very soon. So, as I've said, by the summer, we're going to have extreme drought continuing, growing worse. Things are going to look a little pretty in the spring because it's going to appear there's a lot of water that's filled the reservoirs due to all the precipitation. It is going to dry up unbelievably fast. Vast forest fires. This is going to be a continuing trend, and to be honest, some of the largest fires in the world from 2021 are still burning right now underneath the ground, and they are expected to pop up again in the spring. And we're going to talk about the effect that is happening, and actually this is probably a good time to do so. And I want you to understand that the spinning of the Earth has nothing to do with wind speed, okay? So don't ever think that because the Earth is spinning faster, the windage conditions have anything to do with that. They don't. The reason that we're going to experience more wind and enhanced storms to the point where the weather systems services are already working on a new Category 6 designation, because the power of these storms is not only increasing, these storms are beginning to move out of their normal latitudes and beginning to move further north. This year, the east coast of the U.S. will be under high risk from as far up as New York and higher still for literally the type of hurricane that would normally impact Texas. And they're not going to be prepared for it. So if you live in these areas, if you're living on the coast, you need to make plans before the end of spring on where you're going to go, what you're going to do, how you're going to take care of yourself. You know, these things are going to be essential. One of the issues with the forest fires, okay, is that, you know, and Greenland is a fine example of it. Is not only does all the soot end up literally reaching right up into the stratosphere sometimes and causing problems with marine clouds, which are an essential part of our system, okay? But the heat waves, the raining on the glacier for the first time in known history, the amount of soot, the temperature is coming up enough that all the microorganisms that were dormant are now beginning to wake up. And their sheer numbers and biological processes are beginning to heat the ice from the inside and darken the ice, thereby decreasing the albedo. And albedo is a word that means whiteness. And what it's used for from a scientific point of view is it's a measure of how much radiation is directly reflected back out of our atmosphere, bounces right off that bright snow. You know, if you're out on a bright snowy day that you can't look up and you can't look down, because if you look down, the reflection off the snow is just as bright as the reflection, as the light streaming in from the sun itself, if not brighter sometimes. So that direct reflection of that energy back into space is one of the crucial parts of our climate system, and one of the reasons why during an ice age the planet grows cooler. It's not really because of the ice. And you know, maybe we need to just do a brief little science lesson, and this may sound a little strange, but I think it's valuable to understand. So if we were to look at the moon, you know, the moon gets just as much solar radiation as the Earth does. Absolutely. The differences are minute. But the moon isn't heating up. Why is that? Because, one, the moon has no atmosphere. So because of that, the energy in, energy out equation, which always has to equal zero, always has to be balanced, is perfect on the moon. The moon's stone cold until the sun is shining on it, and then it's brutally hot. And then when the sun's off, it's stone cold again. The energy exchange is perfect. Louisa said she lost me. Okay, I'll try and make it a little clearer yet. When you're on the moon isn't heating up. The moon heats up when the sun is on it, but as soon as the sun comes off it, the temperature drops into the, minus 100 plus. Why is that different from the Earth? Well, the difference is the Earth has an atmosphere. And the Earth has various features on its surface because of that atmosphere that either absorb or radiate part of that energy. But ultimately, the equation always must equal zero. So all that energy coming into the Earth, an equal amount of energy has to go out. And if it doesn't, there's only one way to balance that equation. Certain elements of our planet have to warm up in order to balance it. If they don't warm up, the equation would not be balanced, and universe-ending things may occur. At the end of the day, it's a balance of energy in equals energy out. And when the energy out is less, due to what the Earth is maintaining and holding on to, that energy is transformed into heat, and the planet begins to heat. In 2022, the most severe risk to humanity as a whole is not yet the climate, although it's going to be a righteous pain in the ass. The greatest threat to humanity is going to be the high risk that in early spring, Russia and China may choose to act simultaneously. And they would do that knowing that there's no option for NATO to be able to handle the Ukraine and to handle Taiwan at the same time. There's simply not. Now, as it sits, one or the other is going to make a move for sure. The opportunity that both may choose to move together is in doubt, but it is very real. And this is important because not only can this planet not afford another set of mass-scale conflicts, this is the beginning of the path to a third world war, which will begin to take shape within the 5 to 8 year period that I'm talking about, where civilization as we know it is going to end. And this is not a bad thing, and we're going to talk about why, and there's a reason I keep coming back to that, and a lot of it has to do with the number of people who come to me and are literally shaking in fear. One lady said she's crying almost every night. I said, that's not helping. It's not doing anything. It's okay to weep for the planet. It's okay to weep for the children and what we're going to face. But this is all about action. This is all about opportunity. This is all about choice. And we're going to find out why. So when I consulted the I Ching and basically asked the I Ching the exact same questions, here's what the I Ching had to reply. The hexagram given as an answer was known as the mountain, Khan. Above this mountain summit, another more majestic rises. The superior person is mindful to keep his thoughts in the here and now. In other words, this is not the summit yet. There's more. There's another larger summit, more majestic summit to get over. And that summit from a spiritual point of view, offers enlightenment, awakening. From the physical point of view, of course, it offers suffering. And we're going to talk more deeply about that. Stilling the sensations of the ego, he roams her courtyard. And I did that because, of course, the I Ching is 5,000 years old and tends to be, male-dominated. He roams her courtyard without moving a muscle, unencumbered by the fears and desires of his fellows. This is no mistake. So what that's really talking about is that the objects and things that you cling to in these times are going to become the encumbrances. They're going to become the problem. The fears that you're hiding Kelly said to me the other day, and I had to laugh, and she was talking about, well, I was afraid this would happen and it did, and I was afraid that would happen and it did. And I just chuckled and said, yeah, because if you're always sinking upon that fear, you're going to manifest that fear, and life will do that to you so that it can say, see, you can go through this, regardless whether it manifests or not. But the idea is not to be encumbered by fear, to look at fear and use fear as the opportunity it represents, and that is the opportunity to walk through it. To face up to the world that we've created, to face up to the societies that we've created, to face up to the conditions that we've created. This is no mistake. To climb to this higher plane, you must shake off the desires and fears of the conscious, visible world around you. The conscious, visible world around you that so many of you have held on to for your succor and for your comfort is falling apart. And this is why the I Ching or I Ching is telling you that in order to get to this higher place, you must shake off these desires and fears. To make this journey, you must quiet the ego. Empty your mind of past and future and dwell totally in the moment at hand. Being totally present. Thorough mindfulness of what is before you is the only tranquility. Be here now. Now, that came out of my German translation of the I Ching, and it's the one that I rely upon the most. It's a very good translation, and it's really saying to us that despite the fact that, we're climbing a peak, and this climb is a majestic act for humanity, and there's more we're going to face, more peaks, but offering more opportunity. Every single event is offering us the ability to wake up and say, no more can we do this the way we're doing it. And we're going to get deeper into that after I'm done with this next slide. So the one thing I want to talk about before I go to the next slide, though, is the judgment. And in the I Ching, there is a commentary by great sages known as the judgment. And what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to help you equate it into the, physical everyday life sort of realm. Keeping still, keeping her back still, so that she no longer feels her body, she goes into her courtyard and does not see her people. No blame. True quiet means keeping still when the time has come to keep still, and going forward when the time has come to go forward. In other words, taking action when the time comes to take action. In this way, rest and movement are in agreement with the demands of the time, and thus there is light in life. This hexagram signifies the end and the beginning of all movement. The back is named because in the back are located all the nerve fibers that mediate movement. If a movement of these spinal nerves is brought to a standstill, the ego, with its restlessness, disappears as it were. When a man or woman has thus become calm, she or he may turn to the outside world. They no longer see the struggle and tumult of individual beings. And therefore, they have the true peace of mind which is needed for understanding the laws of the universe and for acting in harmony with them. Whoever acts from these deep levels of being makes no mistakes. In other words, in that place of stillness, in that place of ego cessation, in that place of realization that we are one consciousness, we naturally see the modes of behavior that are necessary to be in harmony with life at the deepest levels of our being. And that's part of the opportunity that we're being offered right now. One of the things about Druidic runes is the Druids were persecuted as so many other people have been persecuted. And a lot of their runic interpretation is pretty damn cut and dried to the point. There's not a lot of use of big words, big sentences. So the Odin's Cross layout is essentially the 4 points of the compass along with a center stone. And the purpose of it is to show the various nodes, the various things that are impacting it, and the center or the outcome of what the future is going to bring. So what we find in the West, and the West is really the current issue that's facing humanity. And I thought this was very interesting because the free will stone is the only blank stone in a rune set. And what it really means is that right now, in this moment, it's totally up to you. And the big problem for all humanity is that it's totally up to us. I was really shocked when I drew that runestone because it hit the nail right on the head. We, with our free will, we are the ones with all the power and freedom to choose. And we have bought into this whole idea of capitalism and you know, it's got to be the most ridiculous thing on a planet to find what's supposed to be an intelligent species that allows themselves to be controlled and live and die by a non-existent, absolutely fake concept that we call money. But based upon a life-destroying, as we're found out, if we haven't found out yet, you shouldn't now damn well know it, that capitalism won't save us. Capitalism is what's destroying us. It's our free will. We don't have to live this way. We don't have to live with this never-ending growth bullshit that will not carry on and will not function. Your time is limited. There's heavy choices to be made, 5 to 8 years. If you've got children, you better start thinking about that very seriously. And it's not going to be about protecting yourself. It's going to be about coming together in small, close-knit communities and literally reversing the clock in a lot of ways. The North, which is the negative impacting mode, and I put that in quotes because it is negative if we allow it. It can easily be positive, is that the connection to others is lacking. We lack mediation between each other, and we lack the awareness of others. And you know where I've seen that coming up over and over again is on Facebook. You know, there was a post mentioning the tens of thousands of people who are buried in snow in absolutely freezing weather conditions, who are facing no power for days. And the people commenting on this post were saying it was karma for them believing in global warming or whatever the case may be. And this is what's going on with us. Our devices, our technology haven't brought us any closer. It is a pseudo closeness. The friends we make on Facebook are pseudo people. They're pseudo friends. When you walk in my door of my house and I wrap my arms around you and you wrap your arms around me and we give each other a hug or we shake hands or we look into each other's eyes and smile face to face in the presence of each other, where two or more are gathered, we know what happens. That is the connection. That's the power. And we're lacking it. It's so easy. I know. Especially, this is kind of part of the big deal, okay? But there is nothing more damaging that COVID has done as a pandemic. And I don't care who you decide to blame it on, because it's not about blame. But the thing that it's done is it's separated us even more. So many people have become so used to hiding alone in their homes and interacting with the world through a screen. And saying, well, sure, it's a suitable replacement. I've got friends all over the planet. How many of those people all over the planet are going to come running when something happens? How many will be able to? This is the big thing on our heads in the north, okay, in that north position on Odin's cross. As long as we're doing okay, we're okay. I can't. I don't see me as okay when there's still one person starving on the street, freezing to death. And that's because you're all me. And you need to get that for yourself. You really do. Let's move on. The East. In the East, we find the supportive mechanism, that which we can rely upon, that will help show us our path in a growing crisis. A cycle is drawing to an end. Change is coming, forced or chosen. This is the runestone that I received. We, as egoic beings, like to keep things the same. One of the things I say to Kelly, sometimes on a daily basis, is that nothing lasts forever. Everything changes. Be grateful right now in this moment, because it may be different in the next moment. And it's not that I ever sit around worrying or caring about what's going to come next, because I really don't. Whatever life's going to bring is what life's going to bring. It's not my job to care about it. It's my job to choose how I'm going to respond to it. And a cycle of humanity is drawing to an end. A cycle in a way of being that's been so destructive to each other and so destructive to this planet is coming to an end. Now, the good news is that we're going to get a little breather later on in the year. Come late fall and through into 2023, we're actually going to get a little break. And the one thing we don't want to do during that break is become complacent. We want to start using every moment we have to do whatever it is we can to help change the path that we're on. And I want you to know that it doesn't matter whether we're successful or not. It really doesn't. You know, as I've said many times, the universe doesn't look at you and say, well, considering all the bullshit that was going on around you and considering the state on the planet, yeah, you did all right. It doesn't do that. The universe looks at you in a vacuum with deep love and says, don't look anywhere else. Look at me. What do you choose? And it reminds us that we can't blame anyone else or anything else or any situation else on what we choose, that it's always our choice. And that's what it comes down to, is what do you choose? In the South, we see the immediate future actions required, and that is insight at the end of a cycle. And what that means is we have to have the insight right now to see that the cycle is coming to an end, that we can no longer live this way, that it can be no longer tolerable to have conditions where some of us are doing okay and so many of us are suffering. Now, it's not going to be easy. The unfortunate reality is there is a 99.999999 chance that this civilization as we know it is going to have to be completely obliterated. But in this same 5 to 8 year period, we have this transformational opportunity to realize the cycle has come to an end and to begin to take transformational adaptation steps across all sectors of our world to make sure that there is enough, to make sure that everyone is homed, to make sure that everyone has good, healthy, plant-based nutrition. You know, I hate to say it, but meat's gotta go. It's not an option. We could do everything else, and if we keep meat, we're really no better off. Take a look at the research. We're in this for the long haul. We can't turn this around. The ship's already heading down the river. And we're stuck on it. The river's going to take us a certain distance before it grounds itself again, no matter what. What we do on board our ship determines how far that distance will be, how much suffering and chaos has to ensue. In the center, unfortunately, is the outcome that I hold eternal optimism won't come about, but in the center is the outcome of sudden loss, affliction, disruption, and suffering, heavily in 2021. That's not very pleasant. Sudden loss, afflictions, disruption, and suffering. An untold scale. So how do we deal with that? How do we prepare ourselves? Well, first and foremost, as I had written in that post, you know, when you come to the understanding that we are all one consciousness, you are offered an opportunity to start viewing it from that state of being. And that there's a certain comfort in that when you do that. There's a realization that even though the appearances here are showing us all these things, that at a higher level of existence, in truth, everything is happening with perfection. It's happening exactly as it needs to happen. This can be a year of empowerment in the face of so many storms and struggles. It can be a year of togetherness, of creating new community, And we're going to have to move to that sort of setup. Very quickly, supply lines, food that's normally grown across the globe that's being imported and exported, all those things are going to begin to slide off even more so. I'm sure you're aware that various cereal grains are down near 50% in a lot of growing areas on the planet. So if there's a full grocery store for you to shop in, is that okay when so many people across the globe don't have that? This is that part of the negative impact that the problem that the North represents have on us. And that is lacking the ability to keep others in our awareness. To realize that it's literally about the whole. It's all about you, but it's got nothing to do with you. And you have to be able to hold those two together. They seem like they're way off base, but they're actually not. So what can we do? Well, there's a number of things we can do. Spending time in meditation, spending time releasing those things that you feel you've attached yourself to. And I'm not saying empty your home of possessions. What I'm saying is let go of what you have. Let go of it. Disattach yourself from it. Be okay with its coming and going, like the river or the rain or the sun. Naturally happy when it's there and okay when it's gone. Knowing that nothing is permanent and that there is a flow to everything. Do not get caught up in the idea that nothing changes. Understand that life itself is change, and that when faced with monumental, accelerating change as we are, the opportunities, the magnificent swan song that humanity could be, the glorious earth-based future we could give to our children is just around the corner. If we want it. And we're choosing either way. Every choice we make is making a choice towards that earth or towards this other earth at the center. And every other indicator that I'm being given is basically it's like there's a big cosmic head looking at me and saying with deep compassion, Garen, I'd love to see this species make it too, but unfortunately, it's not going to happen in this form. It's not going to happen in the way we're choosing to live. In the way we're choosing to treat each other and be with each other. In the things that we hold valuable, the question is going to become more and more apparent. What if you lose everything tomorrow? What if you're going to die tomorrow? What if your home and everything that you own is gone tomorrow? How then do you view what's truly important in your life? What's truly important in your life right now? Is it truly important, or do you just think it to be important? These are the things that we're being offered right now. The winter time is the opportunity, and that's why we're doing this now. The winter time is the opportunity to go inside, to find that place of balance, to look around the world and accept full responsibility for our part in what we've created. Because in that is our power. And trust me, there will be opportunities this year. I know not what yet the universe has in store, but it's time for this monk to go back onto the streets in some form and take this message out there via demonstration and march and whatever else is necessary to get to. So that's how deeply I feel about it. And honestly, I don't even have any of my own damn kids. When I go, I'm the last of my kind. But I care a lot for your children and for you. And all our children. Every creature, every tree, every bit of biodiversity that we destroy, we take away from ourselves. That's the truth of it. So I wish I could sit here and tell you that 2021 is going to be great. It's not. Now, that doesn't mean for some people in some places they're not going to experience just a fine year. But for me, that's not the point. The point is more and more of civilization is starting to suffer, and it is coming closer and closer to our door, and the time to wake up is now. The time to stand for peace in the face of conflict is going to be coming this spring. The time to stand for positive transformational change of our society away from a capitalism, money-based, and into a ecological capitalist system. A system not based on constant growth, where your work isn't for stuff, but your work is for what supports life. There are people, yeah, I do mean 2022. There are people in this group right now who are going to suffer immensely this year. Why? Because the environment and the situation is going to place it upon you. And you need to know that I am always here for you. I will be available whenever necessary, whether I'm doing videos or not. And I will keep you informed as to whatever steps that I am taking and offer you ideas as to what steps you can take, as well as to remind you that ultimately everything is okay. And that everything being okay at that ultimate level has nothing to do with the concept that we can just sit back and let it all fall apart. We're being offered this golden opportunity to unite in the face of what's coming and what will be growing over the years. As I've said, there will be a little break. We'll get about a 6-month piece before things really start in earnest and systems start to really break down. And now is the time. Now is the time to think about growing food at home. Now is the time to think about shopping locally when it comes to the things that you eat. To start getting used to having a more restricted diet in terms of how far things are coming to get to you, because those things are not going to last. I sincerely hope this benefits you tonight. I really do. Again, the goal is not to scare you. The goal is to prepare you. Make sure you have places to go to stay cool when the time comes. Make sure that you keep a record on paper of the people that you need to contact or be able to go to. Don't keep all that information in digital form. And be prepared on a level of your being of open acceptance of what's coming. Resisting it will not stop it. Resisting it takes the energy that we need to action change and places it in the wrong place, trying to keep things the same. And the same is killing us all. It's time for change. The time for change is now. Much love. Really. Namaste. Have a beautiful night. We'll talk again very soon.